If you have been looking at Sony a7R full-frame mirrorless and still are not fully sure whether it is the right buy for your needs, that is exactly what this review is here to clear up before you spend your money. A lot of products can sound great on the listing and still end up feeling underwhelming once they are actually in your hands. So the real question is whether this one gives you solid everyday value, fits the way you plan to use it, and feels worth the price. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. You know, I was just chatting with a friend the other day who's been thinking about upgrading from their old DSLR to something more modern, and they kept asking me, do I really need a full-frame camera? Or am I just paying for specs I'll never use? I totally get where they are coming from. It's a big jump, and you don't want to drop that kind of cash only to realize you're stuck with gear that doesn't actually fit how you shoot. So I told them to hold off until they saw what the Sony a7R could do in real life, not just on paper. If you're in the same boat wondering whether this camera is worth the investment, or just another overhyped gadget, stick around. I'll walk you through what it's actually like to use, who it's really for, and whether it's the right move for your photography. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. For me, this camera came at a great time in my workflow. I'd been experimenting with different lenses and trying to decide whether full frame was worth the cost, and the a7R gave me a chance to test that out without breaking the bank. And what I found was, wow, the low light performance is insane. I mean, we've all heard about how full-frame cameras do better in the dark, and it's not just a myth. I took this thing out on a night shoot last month, and shot some street scenes around midnight, with the ISO cranked to 6400. The noise was minimal, like, usable noise, not the kind that forces you to ditch a shot in post. I was really impressed. And the fact that it goes up to 25,600 means you've got room to push it when you need to, without immediately sacrificing detail. Of course, that's not to say it's perfect. You'll still get some noise, especially when you're dealing with really low lighting, like in an underlit nightclub, or a dark. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but what about the rest of the camera? Is it just as good? And my answer is, yeah, it is. Another thing that surprised me was the continuous shooting speed. It's not a sports camera by any stretch, only 4 frames per second, but I found it totally adequate for most everyday situations. I used it at a friend's wedding last summer, and it handled the candid moments perfectly. You're not going to freeze a racehorse mid-gallop, but for portraits, family shots, or even some street photography, it's more than enough. Plus, the buffer is decent, so you're not waiting ages between bursts. Now, I did find that it slows down a bit when you're shooting raw format, but hey, at least it's consistent. The real winner here is the autofocus system, which locks onto subjects in 1 to 2 clicks. It's fast, accurate, and doesn't have any of those weird hunting moments like older cameras sometimes do. Now, I also want to mention that the Sony a7R is a full-frame camera, which means you get that gorgeous depth of field and better low-light performance compared to crop sensors. But here's the thing, if you're coming from a beginner DSLR, or a mirrorless camera with a smaller sensor, you'll notice the difference right away. I mean, have. Another benefit that I didn't mention earlier is the weight. Full-frame cameras can be beasts, with some weighing in at 5 to 7 pounds. But the a7R, it's actually pretty compact for a camera with this many pixels. Now, don't get me wrong, it still feels solid in the hand, with some heft to it, but it's definitely not one of those cameras that's going to make your arm ache after an hour of shooting. The battery life's also pretty impressive, giving you around 250 shots per charge, depending on how much you're shooting. And when you need to swap it out, the doors open easily and the contacts are spring-loaded for a snug connection. So, to sum it up, if you're a beginner looking for a solid full-frame camera to kickstart your photography journey, the Sony a7R could be a great choice. If you're a pro looking to upgrade, you'll likely find it to be an impressive tool with plenty of features to make your workflow easier. And if you're just a hobbyist who wants a solid camera to hang by their side during shoots, I say give it a shot. Just remember, there's a lot to get used to with this camera, so make sure you take the time to play with it and understand its unique quirks before you dive in.